Welcome to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Well, it is officially spooky season because October is here. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? We are in the 10th month of the year. How crazy is that? By the way, I thought I got rid of the cricket, and either it or its friend has come back. I was quiet for days, but no, I have a podcast to record. Oh boy. Well, this week is the least eventful week of the month. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the October overview. This month is a month I've been talking about since 2022. This is crunchy time. It's crunchy time. Have you seen my crunchy merch? There's a very funny one, funny sweatshirt, and it basically said Astrology says it's going to be crunchy PTO request. But October is definitely a month of mayhem, but not October 4th. Well, it might be, but not with what's going around on the tiki-taki. These conspiracy theorists are really, really scary to me. Because, and actually what's scarier is the people that believe them. I know we want to believe in some kind of evil genius running the show, some kind of Dr. Evil, but I'm afraid the reality is very different. There are privileged people, there are greedy people, but they're really not geniuses. You know, having money and being a genius are not synonymous. Okay. And when people feel really, really powerless, they either look to blame something greater than themselves that may be dishing out the punishment, whether that's a god or an evil genius or an elite group, a cabal, whatever, or they seek power themselves. And we see that a lot in the alt-right pipeline in spirituality. You have people who, just watch witch talk any given day. All these people are like, I'm the toughest, baddest house witch on the planet. And it's like, the most powerful people I know are the most unassuming people I know. Whether it's physical strength or it's metaphysical strength. Because people who are powerful don't have to tell people they're powerful. They just know it and they move about their lives. So all of these things come from fear and disempowerment. So I'm going to talk about that in the next segment. I'm going to talk about October 4th in specific and what I actually see as a potential happening. And then we'll talk about the week starting October 8th. Because from October 8th to the 14th, it's just a lot. It's a lot of astrology and then moving through the rest of the month. So we're going to give your monthly overview. If you're a patron, your mundane outlook will be out this week. Hopefully by Tuesday. Time got away from me. September was just such a weird month. Also in this episode, I'm really excited to announce I've got psychic medium Tracy St, Croi, who is a patron, who is also an amazing professional psychic medium and instructor. And I had her on the show to talk about her perception of things. And by the way, she's friends with Carrie. Don't feel like you have to split your loyalty. We spread the love around here. There's room for everybody. And we talk about that. In fact, Carrie was a guest on Tracy's show. And all her links are in the show notes. So you can check her out when you give her a listen. That's exciting. Of course, we're going to talk to the littles. And we'll do our patron shout outs because without patrons, there is no me. I really want to encourage you to join the Patreon, because I give so much content, whether it's the astrological planner with pages that most weeks, occasionally a week gets away from me, but the crunch reports, the recorded classes that you get, there's so much there. And then beyond that, special discounts, special access. So there's all kinds of stuff. And October is it's really a month for radical change inside and out. And so we'll be radically changing some things around here in a good way. And I think you'll enjoy that. And then we'll do a little bit of astrology Q&A as well. And of course, we'll do our patron only episode. That'll come out later this week. And I'm going to talk more now. I already did the part 2 last week. I roasted a bunch of people's charts. I think boy, did I have fun. Trump, Kevin McCarthy, oh God, who else did I do? Not Gates. Gates doesn't have a birth time. But he does have some wonky transits. Maybe I'll roast him this week. There's so many people to roast. So many people, so little time. And I even talked a little bit about my opinion on Elon Musk's chart. Notice I haven't used the time that was released, and I gave my reasons why in last week's patron-only podcast. This week coming up, I'm going to talk about Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm going to do a reading of The Telltale Heart in honor of spooky season, and talk a little bit about Edgar Allan Poe's chart. We'll have some spooky season patron-only podcasts. So, without further ado, let's get this party started. And, yeah. Oh, here we go. So, this week, we're coming off that Aries full moon. We all might feel like we have a little bit of a hangover from it, because that was a lot of energy. If you had trouble sleeping, welcome to the club. I'm recording this much earlier on a Sunday night because I have been sleepless in Southern California. Just has been wild on the sleep schedule. I got, even though I was without sleep, I got out your astrology planner, patrons. I do have a quick fix, though. Mercury doesn't move into Libra until the 4th, which is completely applicable to this segment of the podcast, because we're going to be talking about October 4th. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but the QAnon types, and it's just a whole level of lead poisoning crazy. And it is. I'm not even going to be nice about it, guys. I don't think we can afford to be nice anymore. There's just a lot of imbalance with the lack of any kind of rational logic, because they refuse to see that those of us who aren't into playing fascists. I don't like Biden either. You know, he's done an okay job, but it wasn't really hard to follow up after Trump. I mean, you could be a corpse and do better. Policy wise, he's very centrist. He's not a progressive. Yes, he is in theory pro-labor, but remember, he kind of threw the railroad workers under the bus. You know, he's a politician. Okay. But he's just not the other guy. Okay. That's basically where it lies. There are many other people that could probably do a fine job. So these people believe that on October 4th, when the emergency broadcasting system does a nationwide alert on cell phones, that it's somehow going to activate the chip from the jab. And you will have your life force energy sucked away or your brain taken over and you'll become a zombie. I am, you guys know me. Like, what does it take for me to be rendered speechless? But, God. No. Not only is that just like an impossibility, just no. It is important to have a broadcast system because of natural disasters, okay? If you've ever been in a natural disaster, you will know how important the emergency broadcast system is. Okay, because you don't know when an earthquake hits. Tsunamis can be unpredictable. Tornadoes are unpredictable. Landslides are unpredictable. These things are unpredictable. Weather-wise, we are going to continue to see the climate crisis grow. And so having that alert on that day at 2:20 p.m. Eastern, 2:20 p.m. Eastern, not 2:22. Like, she blocked me. I mocked her. I mocked the content creator. I wasn't nice. Because she's why we can't have nice things. She's making stuff. It was like the worst excuse for astrology. And I'm like, that's why scientists make fun of us. It's people like that. When that is what's more represented out in the world rather than real astrology, that's why we don't get taken seriously. It's that kind of BS. And then we have to, it makes our job harder. Casey and I talked about it last week. So I'm going to stop there because I could go down that rabbit hole again because I just get so mad. But the energy of October 4th is interesting. And why is that? Well, and this is some errata for you guys. Mercury moving into Libra October 4th, not the 2nd. So anytime we have any planet ingress, it's signifying a big energy shift. So when it comes to communications, we'll be talking. Now this makes sense. We're probably going to be talking a lot about the Supreme Court because first Monday in October is when they meet. So that's the 2nd of October. By Wednesday, there's going to be probably some kind of scandal or brouhaha or decision or opinion that irritates a lot of Americans. Big surprise. As the French would say, quelle surprise. No, that was not my good French accent. I was being facetious. But we got Mars moving into the square with Pluto. Pluto's still retrograde. The moon is in Gemini. Okay. And it is trine later in the day. It is trine Mars. And so honestly, to me, that looks like something going on in Asia, maybe up towards Japan. There's been some Pacific Rim, Northern Pacific Rim seismic activity that has me watching. They've been under 5.0, but I've got my eye on it. This month could be a very seismic month. If there was going to be an earthquake, 6.0 to 7.0. And no, I'm not saying it's going to happen just in the United States. This could be global, could be anywhere. We have listeners in 68 countries. There's more places than just the United States. Remember, directionally, it is very difficult to predict. And I'll keep you guys updated on that. I don't necessarily see it for the first week of October, but it's certainly more likely as we head towards, like in between the solar and lunar eclipse. So in between the 14th and the 28th. But we could see something on Monday. We could. I don't think, because we still have Pluto retrograde, I don't think it's going to be as big, but it could be. These things are very, very hard to predict, exceedingly hard to predict. So when we look at earlier in the day, let's look at that 2:20 p.m. time on the East Coast. That means it's 11:20 a.m. Pacific. So that at that time, Mercury is still in Virgo, which makes total sense for an alert for the emergency broadcasting service. It's an alert. Virgo is a high alert sign. Okay. Libra's a little more like, well, if you feel like it. And we do have the moon in an applying, trying to Mars. Mars is on the south node. This is something that's needed to happen for a while, and it's finally being done. So that's what's up on deck. But I think we could see some air traffic control issues. I think we could see some financial weird news. Venus is getting ready to ingress into Virgo, but not just yet. Not this first week. She doesn't do it till the 8th. So I think we're going to see maybe an air accident, like a helicopter accident, or issues with air traffic control. This might be more likely. Let's see. I think I have this chart set for DC. I do. So maybe up like near Northwest Canada, Alaska, maybe like a bush pilot situation. I'm just postulating. Again, patrons, you'll get your monthly outlook in the headlines. So I think there could be stuff definitely on that day. I think we could see issues with shipping because we still have Mercury in opposition to Neptune. I think we're going to see a breakdown in shipping of all kinds, whether it's trucking, marine travel. We could see erosion events. We could see an interesting storm happen. It could get really windy that day. And we could see even, maybe like San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, BC, up into Alaska. There could be like a stabbing or something that makes national news. So those are kind of like the negative events. On a positive level of what you are able to kind of bust through some old habits, old blocks. This is a month of shedding limitation, shedding your social cultural programming. But that can mean that the conditions around you are stressful, because when you're trying to shed that which no longer serves, it sounds great. It sounds so liberating. But when you've never been free, you don't know how to act. So we have that up on deck as well. So my thoughts on October 4th. Yeah, no to the going into being brain zombies. It'll be about, those predictions will come true about as easily as the rapture did. Who knows? But yeah, yeah, that didn't happen either. That was the September 23rd prediction they had out there. So that's that for October 4th. Now let's look at the rest of the month. Okay, so I'm going to take the next 10 minutes to look at the rest of the month. So on October 8th, Venus ingresses into Virgo. So it might almost feel like things calm down just a little bit, at least for a week or so, because the Venus in Leo squaring off with the Taurus placements was a bit much. It was a bit much. It was a bit stressful, and if you have Leo or Taurus placements, you will be greatly relieved to have this go away. You'll be like, oh good, it's gone. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And you don't have to. It's all done, pumpkins. It's all done. Astro Mama says that is almost done. It's done on the 8th. But then Pluto goes direct, and it goes direct on October 10th. It goes direct on October 10th. And on the 12th, we have Mars entering Scorpio. On October, let's go back to, by the way, Venus enters Virgo into a direct opposition with Saturn. what do I think I see with this? I think I see a lot of issues with the healthcare system. I found out today on TikTok when I made this prediction on a TikTok. One of the commenters said they got a text from Kaiser because they're a Kaiser patient, Kaiser Permanente, and they said, hey, make sure you order any prescriptions, etc., because October 4th is a planned strike at Kaiser. And so, but that didn't go out to the general public. That just went out to patients. And so they were informing me that my prediction was correct. And so that's what we can expect. We're going to see some real issues in healthcare. On top of it, COVID's going to expand. I mean, it already is expanding. Beyond getting the booster, you still need to wear your mask. It's not enough to have a booster. The booster mitigates things. It prevents serious complications. The mask helps not spread anything to anybody else and helps you mitigate against getting COVID. And you want to use a good mask, a tight-fitting mask, not just like surgical masks we know are not the answer. A KN95 or something like that. And there are scientists who will give you just directions on that. I am not one of those, but I'm just saying that's how we deal with things. I'm very concerned about the level of denial out there. We're going to hear more and more studies come out about the risk to cardiovascular health, neurological health, the risks of long COVID, what it means for us long term. And people, come on, kids are involved here, So we start the second week of October with that. And then we could also see some issues with erosion, planning commissions, like subdivisions, construction, and in farmland as well. October 10th, Pluto is direct, and when it stations direct, it's in a square with Mars. This is very volatile. We could see big infrastructure failures. This is big bada boom. Big bada boom. I wrote a free post on Patreon kind of talking about some of what I think is happening. It's a light overview. Here, I'll show you what I'll show you. I'm not doing this one on video. I am not camera ready. I look like a bag lady. No, I'm not being mean to myself. I am unshowered, in my sweats, haven't slept, but I need to get this done so it's out to you tomorrow. So the post is called Farewell September, October Surprises to Come. It's a free post on Patreon. If you want to check me out, you can. By the way, if you enjoy listening to podcasts, make sure you're subscribed on whatever listening service you're on. Let's see. So I wrote the October astrology is pretty wild, as we have Venus finally exiting Leo and out of the square with Uranus. It might also seem boring for a second as the celebrity scandals died down just a skosh. Never fear, Pluto stations direct the second week of October and things get more intense. Yeah, retrogrades are never the problem, especially when we're discussing the transpersonal or outer planets. When the planets are all direct, like in January, things get a little timey-wimey, and that's me playing it down. It gets wild when everything's direct. Mars will slide into Scorpio in October, and people will need to chill out a little, but they won't. There will be skullduggery, intrigue, murders, and all manner of international intrigue. Do not be surprised to see oligarchs fall off roofs in Russia, or ex-CEOs have accidents in China and Taiwan, or both. Now, that doesn't mean anything is going to happen to you. I'm talking about big picture, collective, unconscious stuff. On an individual level, you live your day-to-day life, often truly unfazed or not as impacted as the media would want you to feel. You're obviously impacted by the economy, but there's stuff you can't do anything about. Yeah. You can't, we could all chase windmills if we wanted. So what can you do? You put your attention on you, what moves you forward, what gives you peace. Be as involved as you can afford to be for your mental health, and just take one step at a time. It's all you can do. It's all you can do. And you can have a very liberating month. So, and of course we have our eclipses. Okay. We have our eclipses in October. So we have right before the annular solar eclipse that is visible throughout the southwest and west of the United States, which makes it, remember, if it's visible, there's a malefic impact. This is probably to do with climate change. We may see late season fires. We could see big windstorms come in, and the energy rings out over 6 months. It's not just like that day thing. So, but it could also be changes in leadership in lots of different ways. So it'll be very fascinating to see what happens. But again, that rings out over time. It doesn't mean like, they're keeling over. No, it doesn't. It could be over time. So let me get back to my handy dandy calendar. So remember, we have the annular eclipse on the 14th. Now, if you're not a world leader, a CEO, and I explain this every damn time, if you're not a bigwig, you don't have to worry as much about the malefic impacts except for the environmental factors around you. Okay. So on a personal level, this could be an accelerant to moving faster in your personal or professional goals, depending on where this hits your chart. Now, if you are a patron, next week's part 2 special patron only episode is all about how to use the energy of the annular solar eclipse, which is a new moon. Okay. So, and I'm giving you what I do. Okay. It's not do as I say, not as I do. No, I'm giving you what I do. Okay. And if you get horoscopes and above, you got your planner and you've got your affirmations for the new moon and you've got your activities for the full moon. Yes, do them even though it's an eclipse. So there's that. Then we get a week of where we're just dealing with this wild energy, and there's going to be weirdness on the lunations. And then on the 22nd, we have the Sun and Mercury moving into Scorpio, both on the same day. That doesn't often happen, having the Sun and Mercury move in on the same day. Mercury's only ever 28 degrees away from the Sun, so it's often in the same sign. But for them to ingress at the same time, that happens, but it doesn't happen all that often. So that's kind of cool. So we have Scorpio season begin right ahead of that lunar eclipse on the 28th. And of course, it's in Taurus, right? Because the full moon is always opposite the sun, right? And so there's just a lot of intensity because we'll have, planets meeting up with Mars ahead of that full moon. And that's going to be very interesting when it comes to the economy, food production. We may even, it's going to be interesting. And I'll talk more about that. Remember, every week I give you the rundown, so don't worry. And again, if you are a patron, then the 23rd of October's podcast is going to be all about the lunar eclipse, right? So there we go. We have coffee with Laurie on the 29th. But yeah, it's an intense month. So go easy on yourself. Go easy on yourself. All right. That's what's up. Should you freak out? Should you? Should you? No. No, you should not. All right. Patron shout outs. Well, there's the music. I want to give a big shout out to all of our newest patrons. If you're having trouble accessing any of the Discords, make sure you message me directly on Patreon. If you get the phone app, you can chat there as well. Let's see. Our newest patrons, Becky R. Vieira, Nelly, Susan, Irby, Hector, Aine or Ain? Ain? I am probably butchering your name. It's me, Kimmy, 2021. Lucid Evolution, Ms. Christy, Melissa, Leslie, Nicole, Alyssa, Brandy, Kristen, Adele, Bethany, Jessica, Rosemary, Dallas, Jade, Bay, Michelle, Eli. I met you at Coffee with Laurie. That's why I love Coffee with Laurie. I get to meet people. Thank you for coming. Sarah, Irene, Mike, and C. It is so good to meet you all. So good to meet you all. Thank you for joining the Patreon. Alrighty. So your special spooktacular savings will come out this week, just letting you know. And I am going to be teaching a very cool class about how to work with healing your money issues by understanding your astrology chart. And we're going to do that at the end of October, possibly on the day of the lunar return or of the lunar eclipse, because that would be the perfect day to do it, to help release those blocks and learning how that information in your astrology chart gives you the roadmap and the blueprint to being understanding enough for you, what it means to have enough, how to be comfortable, and how to stop getting in your own way, how to deconstruct from the social cultural programming that can keep you stuck. We're not going to get rid of money anytime soon, and we kind of need it for rent and food and all that fun stuff. So none of you are going to end up greedy by the end of it, but just knowing how to navigate your own abundance switch. You know, what is abundance? And abundance isn't just money. Abundance could be peace, inner peace, having enough friends, a sense of enoughness, a satisfaction. So if you are a patron, stay tuned, because you guys always get your special juicy discounts. And if you are not a patron, why the heck not? Join us. You sponsor the podcast, you learn all about astrology, you get cool horoscopes, I give you crunch reports. I don't know why you wouldn't join, but alrighty dighty. Thank you, patrons. And now it's time for a littles shout out. Well, this shout out is for Arlo, and I have to apologize to you, Arlo. I have not been live streaming, and you have been missing your countdown jam. I hope you like the music I picked for your shout out. I was thinking of what could be a jam that could be jazzy you could dance to. So I want to thank you for listening and enjoying this alongside your mom. It's pretty fun to share activities with other people. In fact, some of our best ideas happen when we are in conversation with other people, right? You have your idea, they have their idea, then it's like peanut butter and chocolate, and they get mixed up together, and you're like, by gosh, that's a good thing. And if one person kept their peanut butter to themselves, or the other person kept their chocolate to themselves, we wouldn't have Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, which we all know is one of the better Halloween candies, other than Kit Kats. But see, that's a cookie and chocolate. It's a collaboration. It's a coming together of two great things that go great together. Right? Yeah. Or, cookies and milk. Notice some of the best things in life are paired up. And that's kind of the energy of the next couple of weeks for us. We want to not get stuck on whose idea is what and how. We want to look at how can we bring good ideas together? How can we work together instead of constantly seeing who's right, who's wrong? If we can come up with solutions together, because it doesn't really take a very smart person to see problems. Have you noticed that? Anybody can see, oh, look, it's broken. The really smart person says, well, I know how to fix it, or even better, I can make another wine that might not break so easy. See? It's really important to be able to explore our ideas with other people and to collaborate. And I think that's what we need to practice a little bit. I think I'm going to take my own advice. See, Arlo, you helped me out. You helped me come up with some ideas. You didn't even know. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful week and keep dancing. All right, I have the wonderful Tracy St. Croi, who is a medium and intuitive instructor. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you for having me, Laurie. Hi, everybody.
So we've got you on because it's a spooktacular episode. One of the things you also do is you do some ghost hunting.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And being a
What's the
medium, I really don't have to hunt. It's more like a
right?
trap.
Exactly, right? How loud does it get when you go to one of those haunted mansions or places that you go to?
Sometimes it can get pretty darn what I like to call there's a lot of people at the party,
Mhm.
right? And it is a lot of, focusing in on one link, shutting everything off. I can tell you when I went to New Orleans in August, I had a really hard time at the haunted hotel that we stayed at. That was a hard time trying to go to sleep with all the noise.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
was it just a big, like a big cacophonous sound, or like how did you experience that? Because I think different people experience these things in their own perceptual ways. So how does it work for you?
So with this experience, and I knew right away the part of this hotel that I was staying at, I got right away, I was like, used to be military here, and this used to be a military hospital. And I just kept thinking, please God, don't put me in the morgue, where the
Mm,
morgue used to be at. And it was not, but I could tell it was a military hospital. And when I was laying there and, setting my boundaries and being like, this is, I paid for this room, kick rocks,
mhm.
get on out.
Mhm.
Still, it was kind of like it was like almost as if like somebody would come in the room and be like, "Oh, hey, you're here." And then try to talk
Mhm.
to me and I'm like, "Gone." Like leave.
Mhm.
And then somebody else would, or sometimes they would come in pairs, and I just had to
Mhm.
just kept setting boundaries. And
Mhm.
so it was more intrusive
Mhm.
than like a cacophony of people around me.
Okay. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
So now you tell us about how you work and what you do. I could ask you tons of questions, but I could just ask you also. Tell us about you. We've been friends for a while now. So, and I do go to Tracy for mediumship. So, I don't bring people on here that I don't know what they do. So, Tracy, tell us what you do.
So what
All of it.
I do with the mediumship is I am able to connect with your loved ones, your friends, your family, and help to achieve peace, closure, or whatever it is that you're looking for. And the
Mhm.
way that I do that is the simplest explanation is that I just kind of open myself up to what I call the spirit world, and I set my intentions, and I just allow them to blend with my energy and start to use my signs and my symbols, my own lexicon that spirit has to
Mhm.
communicate with, right? Like I have a
Mhm.
lot of symbols that I know when they show me something, I know what's going on. Like when I hear squealing tires, I know there's something to do around vehicles, things
Mhm.
like that. So they've got a lot to choose from to help communicate who they are how they
Mhm.
know this person, and what the message is. So they start to use all of my clairvoyant, my clairsentient, clairaudient, all of it to
Mhm.
help communicate to the sitter in front of us
Mhm.
accurately. And
Right.
so I was trained. I think a lot of people who know me know this is that I'm kind of a snob when it comes to training and development of
Mhm.
mediumship or intuitive abilities. And
Mhm.
um, when I got voluntold that this was what I was going to do, I said, okay, you win. I said, but if I'm going to do this, I will not accept anything but the best of the best training. That's it.
Mhm.
And I ended up over at Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Sciences. It's the real Hogwarts, and
Hey,
it's
no,
just
I
north
went to
of London.
Hogwarts. Mine was in the movie. No, I'm kidding. Teasing.
Oh,
Go
oh,
ahead.
you can go to the real one, my darling. It's real. A real castle haunted that you stay there, you learn there, you play there.
Cool.
Comes complete with a graveyard and everything.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, yes, you want to talk about paranormal activity. So that is where, the British know what they're doing at the spiritualist
Yeah.
churches when it comes to training mediums. So that's where
Yep.
I got the bulk of my development from, is from the spiritualist churches, to be able to give evidence, understand ethics,
Mhm.
responsibility, all of that.
Mhm. Mhm. Excellent.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And you also do so you do your mediumship,
Uh-huh.
and then you do psychic readings.
Yes.
And how do those differ? So, like, when
Okay.
I come to you, I
Mhm.
mean, you might be tapping into my dead relatives, but, w can we explain to the listeners, like, what's the difference?
That is a very good question. A lot of people don't know that there is an actual difference between
There
psychics
is.
and mediums.
Mhm. Yep.
So, an easy statement to understand is all mediums are psychic.
Yep.
Not all psychics are mediums.
Yep.
So, psychic work involves our physical world, right?
Mhm.
Our finances, our romances, the honey, the
Mhm.
money, our career, our relationships, our health, our animals. A lot of the physical world information is going to be dealing with psychic information, right?
Mhm.
Personal development.
Mhm.
Mediumship is connecting with a soul,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it, soul, spirit,
Mhm.
that is disincarnate, which means they are no longer in their physical body here on this earth, to be able to blend with them and accurately bring forth information. It's two different energies that you're working with. Psychic energy to me has always been more earthly bound energy,
Mhm.
and mediumship has always been more of tuning into a higher vibration, because
Mhm.
with spirit not having being a non-physical, right? And
Mhm.
they're hanging out in their soul, right? They're flying
Mhm.
around, they're doing whatever,
Mhm.
they're high vibe. So for them to communicate, they got to kind of lower their vibrations and become a little bit more dense. And then
Mhm.
we as humans need to raise our vibration to meet them in the
Mhm.
middle,
Mhm.
the high vibes thing.
The high vibe
So
thing. Agreed. I get it.
exactly. And just a tip out there for our listeners. If somebody says that, they're psychic and a medium, you can always ask them, where did you get your training from?
Mhm.
And if you don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable with that answer, you always have the right to say, okay, thank you, and move along.
Yeah, exactly. And it is important to make sure that you're with somebody who knows what they're doing, because
Yeah,
there's a huge difference and there's a lot of damage done by the fraud. So that's why you see those of us who are the real deal on the TikToky or the Facebooky or the Instagrammy absolutely frustrated up to the eyeballs sometimes and be like, why are they so upset? Because we know the damage it does to people, you
I
know.
do. I can't tell you, Lori. I mean, I don't, I know you've had a lot of people, I've had a lot of people, I mean, literally come to
Hmm.
me in tears
Yeah.
because of what some, no talent hack told them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
usually it
Yeah.
has to do around something fearful
Always. Or
and
their
and
trauma,
maybe, uh-huh.
you know.
They'll play on your fear, your trauma, and then
Hmm.
they'll take your wallet.
Oh yeah. 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 So
Don't get me
we
started on
only,
that, Lori.
oh God, I know. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm going to switch us over because we could probably
Okay,
just bitch and kvetch about that all day long.
I know.
Um, so fun fact about Tracy, because I have her astrology chart up in front of me, because her birthday's coming up October
Eh,
13th, Friday the 13th, and you were born on a Friday the 13th, right?
explains a lot.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're a spectacular person. When
I
the
am.
first time I read your chart, I was like, so you've always been psychic, like you were born with the clairs, it's just so freaking evident in your chart. It's Carrie and you both. Because I've had Carrie on this show. You both it's just like it's in neon and it's like flashing. There's no second guessing it. It's just yes, hello, there you are. Um, that's why I love how you said you were voluntold. I love that voluntold. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you were born to do this, and it's very very clear in your chart. Um, what are you planning to do to celebrate that this Jan birthday is up?
I usually try to go and do something a little spooky with my friends, even if it's just walking around some of the hot, paranormal spots here in town,
Mm-hmm.
or, there was a couple of seances going on, but the tickets sold out, so I was bummed. I wanted to get to
Oh,
a seance. So
that's
I
fair.
usually like to do something obviously spooky around this time of year.
I love my fellow Scorpio risings.
Yeah.
True story. When I was in high school, like my senior year, I asked a boy out that I had known all through high school to go out on a date with me because if I didn't ask, nobody was asking me. It just
Hmm.
wasn't happening. And so he decided to take me to see Angel Heart, the movie. Do you remember
Okay.
that? It's a really creepy film set in New Orleans, and it had Lisa Bonet in it. And
I'm getting
oh, it was,
flashes.
yeah. If you want to watch a good spooky movie, it was a pretty good one, and I enjoyed it because again, Scorpio rising. And then he took me to a cemetery to freak me out. I made him cry.
I was gonna say.
Scorpio risings in cemeteries. It's like, yes. It was late
I
at
know.
night.
I
And I,
keep
yeah,
I keep thinking, let's have a picnic.
right. Exactly. That's what people used to do anyway. Zombies aren't real people. Well, there is a form of zombie, but it's not the kind you think of. But it usually involves different herbal structures and stuff. So, but anyway, I digress. So, now, you mentioned training. You train people and with people being so interested in this and wanting to know like I get asked all the time and I answer the question all the time, but people ask, how do I know the difference between, anxious thoughts or intrusive thoughts and my intuition? You've got some classes coming up. Is that something you're going to cover?
Oh yes. I definitely will be covering a lot of, psychic information versus our fears, our doubts, our
Mhm.
insecurities.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. The difference between that information mediumship. One of the things that you will learn in my classes is understanding how your mechanics work. Because how your
Nice.
mechanics work are going to be completely different than everybody else's.
Mhm. I love that you said you have your own lexicon because I always tell people our perceptions are unique and individual.
Hmm.
And so interpretation can vary, and you have to look at language. And the more you know about, the more you can know, the better you can be. And when you said you have your own signs, your own symbols, I know John Edward does too,
Hmm.
because he talks about it in his things. I think anybody who does this has their own, and so is that something like, now I know this is beginner work. Is that something they learn at the beginning level, or what are they learning?
So at the beginning at mediumship, what I'm really, and it's a 3 week long class, but we're going to be together for 6 hours, 6+ hours
Mm-hmm.
total. So what we're going to learn is first you got to learn how to link, right? Before we even worry
Mm-hmm.
about the lexicon and the information and who do
Mm-hmm.
we have and who they belong to, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to learn how to calm that nervous system down
Mm-hmm.
because mediumship is a passive thing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
an active. You got to be
Mm-hmm.
kind of chill out, and we learn how to do that. We learn how to link, and then we learn how to get, the 4 or 5 most pertinent pieces of information, because if the sitter in front of you doesn't know who you're talking to, you're literally just making up a story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to learn that. And then in my other classes, we talk more about developing your own lexicon and developing your symbols and everything like that. The beginning class is just about like, I really want you to build a trust with yourself and the
Mm-hmm.
spirit world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which can be tricky,
Very.
even if you're born with all the clairs, because society and what have you. I know I spent from like 17 to 21 really fascinated by like reading auras. Like I spent an entire day one summer reading through this how to read aura or see aura books or read auras. And I got to the middle of the book and I was like, oh, I do that all the time. I thought that was just my bad eyesight. It's not, it's a thing. Spent a lot of time with that, but you don't know how to trust it if you don't have training. And also, when you're playing with energy, if you're afraid, that
Yeah.
is not a good thing.
Yeah. And that's part of what with either the mediumship development or the psychic development classes, we're
Mhm.
going to talk about, what is your fears,
Mhm.
because I don't know anybody who isn't intuitive. Everybody is born with
Absolutely.
some kind of intuitive knowing,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
can be developed if you so choose to do so.
Mhm.
But yeah, we're
Mhm.
gonna work through your fears,
Mhm.
because part of what I tell people is you psychic development really isn't psychic development. It's really about developing a trust with yourself,
That's
which this
beautiful.
culture
Mhm.
does not cultivate or advocate.
Well, you don't make a lot of money out of people who trust themselves.
Exactly.
Except you do. You do. And that's what it's so short-sighted to keep people in fear because like you and we read for each other.
Yeah,
I go to a lot of different people. One, you don't have perspective on your own stuff,
exactly.
right? So that's why
Yeah,
we work with each
life
other.
gets yeah, life gets suction cupped to our face sometimes, as one mentor told me.
Right? That's a really good way. Yeah. I mean, even when I read for my daughter, I have to step back like from the chart and go, I have to read you like any other client. Hang on a second. And I literally just kind of wipe the slate inside my head
Yeah.
and go,
And
I'm
that
just
and that's
pretending you're
something
somebody.
that
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I have to, that in psychic development will go over is, how
Mhm.
to back up from your own energy and how to maybe tune into like, ooh, I got skin in the game in this one. I got to back up.
Mhm. 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 And that's the other thing. Yeah. So understanding your own biases, understanding now I learned that to become a political analyst because you have to step back from your beliefs. There's a lot that don't, and we see the results. But I had a very, very, very good head of my department who just reamed me until I did it right. Um, but people don't realize their religious bias or even religious training, even if they left somewhere. And so I'm sure you'll have those discussions or that's part of the fears and stuff.
Oh,
When do these classes start, Tracy?
October. October, so there's a couple of them. I've got they're running multiple times through October through December. So there's two classes that start in October, there's another one that starts in November, and there's a couple more that are going to be starting in December. And depending on the feedback, it'll definitely go into next year and fingers crossed applesauce to be able to start a really good online practice circle.
Oh, nice. That's great. Those are
Yeah.
needed. Absolutely. It's always and it's fun to be with people who do what you do too. Um, I'll get that into the show notes so people know where to find you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. What else? What do you think? Oh, you've got some cards. So this
I
month, as I've been telling everybody in the podcast, this month is a bit of a caca show. Remember, we've been watching our language because of the littles. So,
Yeah.
um, but what are you going to tell us about it? What is the thing we most need to focus on to
Okay.
stay even this month that is full of
Okay.
wild energy?
So we'll just ask Spirit, what does everybody out there in the collective need to know about staying grounded and feeling empowered the month of
Love it.
October? It's all about the questions that you ask, guys. It's all about the
Mhm.
question.
Absolutely.
Let's
The quality of
see.
the question always
It
determines
is.
the quality of the outcome. Mhm.
Exactly. So let's just see on this. So we're going to tell quite, oh, darling. Yes, 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 indeed. Indeed, you are correct, Lori, about your forecast. Okay. So we have overall, you guys, it is about analysis paralysis is the theme for this month that we are going to be looking at. And when
Mhm.
we're in analysis paralysis, Spirit is saying that is because of perceived fears. So false evidence appearing real. So that
Mhm.
thought of, I'm not going to get something I want, or somebody's going to take something I have.
Mhm.
This is what Spirit is saying that we are going to be asked to step back from and
Mhm.
ask yourself a question. Is it real? Is
Mhm.
it true?
Mhm.
Do you want it to be true?
Mhm.
Because by the end of the month collectively we got loyal heart in protection, which talks about if we're able to see kind of what I like to say is rise above the fray and see kind of past what either your fears, the media, whoever is trying to get you to look at, you're going to see what's really loyal to you. And that could be starting to trust your intuition by taking one of my classes
Mm.
or listening to a few more Lori's podcasts. You're going to start to see
Absolutely.
what is loyal to you and
Yeah.
saying, maybe, this job isn't doing it and I need to
Right.
look somewhere else that's going to value me.
Right.
Or my
Right.
partner, you know, um, can't seem to make a decision moving forward and it's causing me a lot of fear. So I need to sit down and have a heart to heart, a loyal heart to heart
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
see, are we going to be able to make it?
Mhm.
So this month, you guys stay out of analysis paralysis, make some choices, and the fear is false.
Yeah, and no decision is a decision. So if you're like, if you're stuck in analysis paralysis, you're making a decision. And your
Mhm,
decision is to be uncomfortable. And you can
mhm,
bitch and whine and moan to the whole wide world.
right.
But
And this story is gonna be around all, like, changes that change
mhm.
fast, quick, unexpected changes in the wind.
Oh, both
And
literally and figuratively, because it's gonna
well,
be
literally and
da-da-da-da,
figuratively,
da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da.
because what I see in
Yeah.
my head and what I see is I see messy desk, like somebody opens a window and all the papers go everywhere. So that
Mhm.
tells me there's something in the business finance world that's going to be stirred up. Like information is going to be put out there and it's all
Big
going to
time.
be for the world to see.
Oh, big time. More than one. I think we're gonna see a big bank. I think we're gonna see commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We already know this, and I think that this has to do around the Cheeto man too.
Oh, he gets so like it has only just begun for him.
Oh, I love that for him. God, do I love
It's
that for him.
only just begun to suck.
Mufaha.
Am I unbiased there? No, because I have loathed that man since I was in high school. He fooled no
Yeah.
one. He just encouraged the egregious.
Mhm.
So,
And
yeah.
I think that's going to come apart, and even in your personal life, you might be feeling that analysis paralysis because you feel a shift, a change in the
Mhm.
wind, something's coming and you're getting scary
Mhm.
because I'm going to lose what I want.
Mhm.
You, you know, I
What you
I'm a
want
Scorpio.
isn't always what you need.
Exactly. I'm a Scorpio rising, so I understand the concept of not letting go of something that didn't have some claw marks on it, right? But this month it's going to be let it fly in the wind.
I'm a Scorpio rising too, but the universe beat me up, so I'm really good at letting go of stuff now.
Sometimes
Except bad
it depends on what
astrologers.
it is.
Except bad
Yeah.
astrologers. I can't let that go. I may have to. Actually, I do. I block them now. I just block them because it's a lot of distraction. So, guys, she doesn't even know what I've talked about because we're recording this separately from the rest of the podcast. So, she has no idea how she lined up with everything I've already talked about.
Ooh,
But that's
spirit
how it
working.
works. That's how
Yes.
it works.
This has been fun.
It is fun. I'm glad I got you on here. I want to have you on again. We'll
I
catch
would
up again. Maybe after actually maybe we'll catch up in like November. Talk about your classes and what's going on.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I'm excited. I love teaching. I love being able to send people out into the world with confidence and clarity to be able to seek another mentor out or take another class with me. It's
Hmm.
just gives me the zingers.
Well, and you're a hell of a teacher. Again, I'm looking at your chart right now, and you got Jupiter in Leo in your ninth house. And so you have a broad spectrum approach to teaching.
I do.
Broad
I do.
spectrum, and you love it. I mean, it literally lights your heart up all the way. And it wasn't an easy thing for you to step into right away. It was kind of scary for you to start, but once you got rolling, you realized how much it fed you. And I mean,
I
like
was
in the heart space, it's
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
I was very scared to start to
Mhm.
I was scared a lot to do a lot of things to, put a shingle
Mhm.
out and tell people I was doing
Mhm.
readings or let alone start teaching.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
I like to give people information and I like to say, now go out and seek more from somebody else. You need more than
Yes,
one mentor.
absolutely. Yep. That's exactly what I tell my apprentices all the time. Go learn from other people, all the different things you can learn. Go listen to other podcasts. Go read books. Go find them. You have to. I studied under some great astrologers, you know.
Yeah,
So,
studied
um,
under.
It's
Yes.
important. And they all had different ways of doing it. And then you just glean through, you know.
Mhm.
So
Take what
absolutely.
you
Well, I'm
need.
excited for you. You have great stuff coming up. Now, you also have a podcast.
I
Yes.
do. I do.
Plug
It's
it.
called, of course, it's out of spooky season, so it's called Haunted Road Trip Show.
Awesome.
And you can find it on all of your preferred networks. And if you would like to see the actual video of it, you can go and watch that all on YouTube, where I go live and do live premieres and answer questions afterwards. And
Awesome.
you just have a lot of fun.
I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Alrighty. Well, before we end though, I have a really quick question.
go for it.
So do you think, and this, I'm just asking your opinion, I have no skin in this game, but do you think there's a difference between spirit when you're connecting and what people think of as a ghost as compared to a poltergeist? How would you describe and define those?
Okay,
I know,
so the
then we'll
difference
end.
between a poltergeist, spirit, and spirit. Okay,
And a
so
ghost.
and a ghost and spirit. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, ooh, complicated answer. Okay. So when I say I connect with spirit, that is typically, unless we're talking about guides or, angels or whatever, typically that is going to be, the soul of a loved one of mine, of somebody else's. Um, and that would be small s. Big S spirit to me would be the same as somebody saying God or higher power or
Mm-hmm.
universe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a ghost is, well, it could be two things. It could be that leftover residual energy that you're seeing of somebody who did something all the time, walk up and down a hallway or walk up and
Mm-hmm.
down the stairs or made a certain noise with their feet every night.
Mm-hmm.
That's one form of a ghost. That would be
Mm-hmm.
residual energy. Another form, I really like to say they're more spirit than actual, like, I don't know. I guess the terminology could get so messed up because there's intelligent haunts and then there's residual.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligent haunts are going to
Mm-hmm.
interact with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then poltergeist, I've always had a sense that poltergeists were actually not a spirit. I've
Mm-hmm.
always entertained, I've, I've always felt like some kind of anger
Yeah.
energy left over. Something that there's something else going on there besides an angry spirit. And what that
Mm-hmm.
exactly is going to differ from case to case, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could
Mm-hmm.
be, the essence of everybody's collective energy left over there.
Yeah.
But you can set boundaries.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, now for certain, I would not want poltergeist activity in my home. No, ma'am. Even though
I
I did have some very interesting paranormal activity that I'll have to make a podcast about in my own home that took me a while to figure out.
yeah. I took a
That was a
dare
long.
in college and I stayed in a room with a poltergeist. Nobody had made it more than 2 weeks. And the deal was through the college, through the university itself, was if you could stay there for an entire quarter, you could then get room for free in a different room. I was a broke college kid.
You did it.
I did it.
Yeah.
It scared the living crap out of me.
What happened?
It
Do
it
tell.
through my glasses across the room, like this is at night, right? And you would feel like it was anger and malevolence. And the university I went to had been the Royal Masonic School for Boys in Bushy in Hertfordshire in England. And so it's in the second Harry Potter movie. And there was a morgue there too because of TB. Shout out to John Green. But and that was not the room I stayed in. That was another building in the back. And I knew it because, again, I didn't have any, I was a teenager. But I knew that that building always gave me the ick. But this energy in this room was very uncomfortable. You could feel it when you walked in. And then at night, when I would just put my head down on the pillow, something of mine would fly across the room from
Mm.
my desk. My lipstick, my glasses, I wasn't touching anything. I'm laying down on the bed. My radio would fritz off. And I wasn't going to lose the damn bet. And so I would put the covers over my head and I would sing songs because I didn't know. I could just be like, hey, you can't, And finally, after about a month of this, I got really frustrated because I was really tired. I had a heavy course load and I just didn't have the time or freaking patience for the BS anymore. And I went from being afraid to angry myself at it. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, get over yourself. Leave me alone. I'm tired of this. You're just a
Mm-hmm.
problem person. Leave me alone. And I just gave it a lecture and it cooled off a little bit. It still made the radio fritz, but it started to diminish. And it's because I stopped being afraid. I stopped feeding it.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know that
That
I cleared the room entirely. I don't know how, but other people could stay there after I did it. How weird, huh? And I knew none of this. I had read Theosophy and I didn't know I was a metaphysician though. I just, you know,
wow.
I was steeped in it, but I didn't know it. It hadn't dawned
But
on
that
me.
just goes to prove for all of you out there that boundaries do work.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
And yeah, I've had to set boundaries with that before. Don't touch my
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Don't turn
Mm-hmm.
things on. Don't
Mm-hmm.
touch me.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I could do that on purpose though. So I didn't know what
Yeah.
worked. And that's why training is so important,
Oh
guys.
God, yeah.
So I would have saved myself years of trial and error because there were also ghosts. Because we would hear, and this is more like you were talking about, it's almost like it's like on loop,
Mm-hmm.
and so we would hear horses' hoofs at night on the cobbles. And you would see here, it's like maybe on a full moon night, I'd lean out my window and I'd see somebody from another house because houses are an English boarding school thing. So I was in G house and I could see somebody in A house leaning out their window too. And we all heard it. We'd be like, you heard that? Yeah, I heard that. Okay. So it wasn't, we'd be like, alrighty. So there were differences. So, which I had already seen dead people as a kid. So,
Yeah.
like walk out of my closet and crap. But I honor my mediums and my psychics. I wouldn't want to be a medium. It's too emotional for me. I have a hard time
It's a lot.
separating that out. Yeah, it is a lot. I get enough in astrology readings, but
I think because of a lot of if you're qualified or you're trained very well
mhm,
because of the trauma that I had growing up, I learned how to
mhm,
compartmentalize very, very quickly. So I
mhm,
use that
mhm,
skill in mediumship.
mhm. I do that in astrology, but for some reason I have a really hard time doing that when it's around grief. And I think that's because my Venus is in the eighth house.
Ah,
And so
yes,
grief gets
yes,
expanded and
yeah.
and don't be afraid to have grief in an astrology reading because it's a different part of the brain that you're using. But yeah, it's the same reason I didn't become a therapist. So there's all kinds of things that people don't know about this world. And you get to discover here on the Awake Space Astrology podcast and Haunted Road Show, and with people like Miss Carrie and Miss Tracy and my astrologers. There's so many talented people.
And if you like Miss Carrie Wilson, she is an upcoming guest on one of my podcasts, y'all. So
Oh my
I got
God.
her on.
Yes. See, we support one another.
Yes.
This goes back to
Yes,
your cards, that fear of, oh no, there's not enough room. There's so much room for all of us.
there's a lot of room. We even helped her get to 1,000 on TikTok. I got her to go
Yes.
live with me the other night. So
Awesome.
if you like me and Carrie, go follow us and Casey too. She's on TikTok. We oftentimes
Absolutely.
support each other on each other's lives.
Absolutely. 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 There is always room to support one another. And we need that with the Pluto and Aquarius era coming up.
I'm
Well,
excited
Miss
about it.
Tracy. Right? Me too. Me too. Woo. All right, ma'am. I will have all of your information in the show notes so people can find you and hear your cool stories and see your cool shows, because Tracy does cool stuff. You guys need to keep an eye on her. She is awesome. So until next time, madam. Au revoir.
Till next
I just love Tracy. Tracy and I have been friends for about 3 years now. And, one of the things I love about being in this industry is there are so many heartfelt people coming from different perspectives, but at the essence, all doing the same job, uplifting people, connecting people with their truth, connecting people to things that help find closure, connecting people to their very best selves. And Tracy is definitely dedicated to that. Don't you just love that she had Miss Carrie on her podcast? I can't wait till that airs. That's exciting. I know I'm tuning in. And if you don't know who Miss Carrie is, Miss Carrie Wilson is an amazing evidential medium. And she was on the podcast about a month ago or so. And she is, well, actually, it might have been a couple of months ago. But anyway, she was on the podcast. Oh, my God. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Do, 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 do. Oh, it sure do. It sure do. Speaking of, our listens keep going up. We hit 2,500 listens in the first 7 days of the podcast, guys. That's outstanding. That's outstanding. We're well on our way towards being in the top 3% of podcasts globally. It's huge. So to every one of you listening, thank you. I got asked a question the other day. They're like, do you get compensated for every listen? No, I do not. I get compensated for the ambassador ad. It's a very small amount of money. As my mom says, well, that'll buy you some coffee. And that's about what it does. I do like this platform. I use it for my podcast, and that's why I run that ambassador ad. But really, this podcast is funded by patrons. So when I say there is no me without you, I'm not kidding. You guys have helped shape this and make this podcast be what it is, and I couldn't be prouder. Speaking of, it is time for some patron shoutouts. So, or not patron shoutouts. Good God, you can tell I'm tired. Haha, psych. We're going to answer some podcast questions. So, let's see. Yes, I've got a great question from Spencer. Spencer and I made it through the lockdowns together. Spencer was one of my very first followers on TikTok and was on my live streams from like when I first could go live, when I first got 1,000 people following. So Spencer is teacher's pet. Okay. I know I say I don't have favorites, and that's true. I love you all, but Spencer's special. Okay. So we're in college together now. We went through high school. Now we're in college. All right. So, hi, Laurie. I asked this question in Discord a few months ago, but I'm still curious about it. Can finding your accurate birth time after looking at an inaccurate birth chart reflect a change in personality or someone's life? Is the old chart still relevant? My moon sign changed from Libra to Virgo, and my Sun, Mercury, and Saturn shifted from the 12th to the 1st. You don't have to elaborate on the placements. Spencer, I love you. Thank you. So here's the deal. Yeah, it is significant because it shows you coming into yourself. You're liberating yourself into your authentic self. And I know this one personally because even though my birth certificate has a time on it, my parents always insisted the time was wrong and that I was born at a certain time. Because my dad, and I trust my dad because my dad has a Virgo moon. My mom was heavily sedated. They would slow down her labor and made it last longer because there were a lot of babies born the day I was born. And like there were women out in the, they had them on gurneys in the hallways. It was that kind of busy day in July of 1969. But as a young astrologer, I went with the birth certificate time, which gave me a Virgo midheaven and interceptions like you wouldn't believe. And I was not able to be authentically myself for a lot of reasons because of trauma, severe trauma. And some of that not from abuse. Some of it was very much from abuse, like really bad. And I talked to a colleague of mine. I played around with my birth time for years, but it's hard to rectify your own time because you're not unbiased. It's very hard. In fact, Tracy and I talked about that. Remember, we talked about how it's really hard to kind of read for yourself. And so I went to a colleague who I know is very accurate and a very skilled astrologer. Like their brain, if you think my brain is astrologically cool and you think of the cogs and the whirs, he's even more so, And so I went to him and he rectified my chart and he put it at an earlier time and it opened up. Now, this was 2020. This was before I got to TikTok. This was because I had looked at my transits out to 2035 and I was like, hey, can you take a look at my chart? Can you check the time on my chart? Here's a list of all the events that have happened to me with the dates, times if I had them, places where things occurred. And he was very excited to get a very thorough list. It's really nice when you're doing that with somebody who's an actual, we know what the other person needs to do it. And so he rectified me back a little further. But my dad's Virgo moon, I was like, my dad's so damn precise. That's where I get it from, where I yell about accuracy, because my dad doesn't say good enough. My dad's all about, accuracy. And so I kind of split the difference between those times. And my life really, really did change. I really saw myself in a different way. I felt differently. I was more able to act, like when I tried to act on certain elements of the other chart with the birth certificate time, like stuff just didn't work out timing wise, or, and so that's why I'd been playing around with it for years, so our birth certificates are not always correct either. But, and mine was actually, a good 20, 30 minutes off. But by the time somebody got around to writing paperwork, because there were women lining the hallways, there were that many babies being born. Why? Because the winter of 1968 was a cold one. And it started early. I thought that was a joke until I met other people my parents' age. And they were like, nope, no joke. I'm like, oh, well, now we know. Now we know why there were so many summer babies in the Pacific Northwest in the summer of 69. But yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, it does coincide with a new understanding of yourself, Spencer. And I would keep the old chart around just to kind of compare and contrast your growth. So, yeah. If you've had to pretend to be someone you're not, then that other chart may very well reflect that. So, good question. I don't want to delete it. I'll remember. Alrighty. Oh, Lisette. If you had any, what would be 5 of your unpopular astrology opinions? You guys usually know what those are because I say them all the time. Number 1, whole sign is a ridiculous system to use. It's very inaccurate. It wasn't able to be precise. And when it comes to working at the highest northern latitudes, like at the Arctic Circle or Antarctica, we would then use the porphyry system. But Placidus, in my opinion, and experience, is by far the more accurate. So there's that. Second of all, just because it was done in ancient times doesn't mean it is correct. Because not everything that is in a culture or belief system is sacred. And I said what I said. Yeah. Because it's not, things, especially when we're predeterminate, when people get into the fate and destiny and you're screwed up and you'll always have bad luck. That's shitty astrology, and that's a control mechanism. Let's see. Number 3, what would be my next unpopular opinion? I think using extraneous objects like asteroids is just shows you haven't actually done a lot of thought or consideration about the just basic celestial bodies. And I think people make it fit all the time. Asteroids are very new, and if you're looking at them based off their name, I don't know. That makes no logical sense. It makes no logical sense. Let's make it fit, and it's not good analysis. So, not a fan. Let's see. That would be 4. What's number 5? Unpopular planet. Oh, Black Moon Lilith is not even real. It's not even real. It's not a real celestial object. It was made up. Go look up Safariel. Okay. He lied. Okay. He lied, and millions of young people, especially feminists, grabbed onto this. And honestly, I have a problem with all of the fall of man stories. If you wanted to control people, wouldn't you want them to believe they were less than, they were faulty, they were dirty, they needed to be saved or rescued or had to work to become pure in some way? I don't know. I have a problem with a lot of the origin stories. And I'd be like, but they all must be true if they're so similar. I disagree. I think it just shows that we learned very early on how to control people with blame, shame, and guilt. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you, Lisa. Always such good questions. Guys, you can ask questions if you are a patron. Lisa. Again. If you could go back to your first year of your astrological studies, what advice would you give yourself? I would say the biggest advice I would have given myself, and I could still use today, is stop comparing yourself to people who are ahead of the game than you, more ahead than you. If you are just starting something, you cannot possibly compare your skill level to somebody who's been at it for 20, 30, 40 years. You just can't. Or even somebody who's been doing it for 5 years if you've just started. Okay. That sometimes you just have to put in the time. And my study system was great. It just takes time for things to percolate and integrate. as far as knowledge goes. So that's my biggest piece of advice. Stop comparing yourself. So there you go. Let's see. Let's see. I think that's a good one for the patron only podcast. That's about Jupiter retrograde. Ooh, this is a good one from Steve of Finland. When considering a transit, when do you consider the transit to be activated? For instance, should I think about being in my Pluto square period when I'm within a certain orb, or until the first exact square happens? Connected to that, do you use different orbs depending on how fast the planet moves around the zodiac? Very good question, Steve, of course. So all planets, and when I say planets, I mean the luminaries and the actual planets, not Chiron, not the nodes, not the point, none of the Arabic parts. So from the sun through Pluto, we use up to an 8-degree orb. And when it is on the approach, that would be approaching the exact square. So it'd be 8 degrees of, out from exact. And then we have the separating aspect. And so, yeah, you could, but you have to understand, not everybody will experience a Pluto square in their lifetime. Kids born now may not. In fact, they won't. Kids born today might, towards the end, middle-aged. It won't even be early 30s, mid-30s, because of the way Pluto's slowing down. Kids born in 2024, like let's say January of 2024, would have to live till 2135, which is possible. But let me do some math on my calculator, because don't make me do it. I haven't slept, Steve of Finland. Alrighty, let me check. Let's see. So we've got 2135, and then we've got 2024. Yeah. The kids born next year would have to live to be 111 years old to hit their Pluto square. So there we go, because Pluto has an irregular orbit. So you do have to know the speeds. That's why I have cautioned against people calling Pluto a generational planet. I think it's much better to say transpersonal. Now, Uranus has a very stable orbit. So does Neptune. And I honestly think Neptune is much more of a generational marker than Pluto is. So there's that, because Neptune has a regular orbit. It spends 14 years in a sign. So there's that. Now, for fixed stars, we use anywhere from a 2.32 degree 3 minute orb all the way down to a 1.2 orb. You can get really, really precise with that. But fixed stars are something I wouldn't suggest somebody looking into until they have more understanding of astrology, the actual building blocks of astrology. Like, don't look up the extra stuff. It's not going to give you any extra information. It's just going to confuse things. And I'm not just talking to you, Steve. I know you're a very bright man. But I'm talking about other people. But yeah, with the nodes, so when people are like, oh my God, it's 5 degrees out, the Mars is 5 degrees out from the node, then it's not in aspect. It won't be an aspect till it's 2 degrees, because the nodes shed no rays. Point of fortune, same thing. Point of whatever, spirit, that there's a point for everything. 2 degree orbs. That is the technical orb. So we have merch for this. I have a hoodie that says I like tight orbs. That's right. I like tight orbs. I tell no lies. Those were good questions. You guys are so good. Come on, patrons, ask me more questions. Saving that one for the patron only podcast. That one's for the patron only podcast. I'm under 20 questions, guys. Look at you. You guys are amazing. Oh, wow. Lisette's asking me. I feel like an old lady now. And that I don't mean that as an insult, but it's like, what was it like in the previous century? But Lisette asked, do you remember your first epiphany during your astro studies? My big aha moment. Yeah. I was looking at my daughter's chart. I was just fluent enough that I really didn't need to look up what the glyphs meant. And I could look at a chart and, I knew my ABCs. And I saw her moon, Mars, Jupiter conjunction. And I had this flash of insight. It was really like getting hit by a lightning bolt. And I realized I was always going to be larger than life to her. And I could literally be the biggest, scariest monster in the world. Or I could be like a goddess, but I was never going to get to be ordinary. I was never, like, while she was growing up. And I realized how necessary it was for me to heal and lead the way forward and do the work for the benefit of my own child, because it terrified me to think that I could be the biggest, scariest person in her life when I came from trauma. And I was so dedicated to being a good mom. But also having a child without resources or the right kind of support, because one, where I lived, there was no doctor-patient confidentiality laws. And so it was really hard to get, like a counselor and know that people weren't going to be talking about your business. And two, psychology just really hadn't caught up in the 90s. It really didn't. All it basically said was, you've had all these bad things happen and you are forever broken. And that wasn't a good enough answer looking at my beautiful, perfect child. I was like, nope, I have to heal. And it wasn't an easy process. She and I talk a lot about that. And I was reactive, so I had to learn skills, and I really empowered my kids, even though they shouldn't have had to have been empowered in that way. But while I was healing from the CPTSD and other related disorders, trauma-based disorders, I did, like, if I was being reactive, I gave my 5, 6, 7-year-old child the ability to put me in timeout. But we didn't do timeout as an isolating event in my house, because I didn't believe in social isolation. Like, if my kids went to timeout, a lot of times it was just sitting quietly in a corner and I sat with them, next to them, and we would maybe hold pinkies or something. They were never isolated or locked in a room or, all those horrible things that some people do. So I empowered her. She's like, hey, Mom, you need to go to timeout. You're scary. And that would immediately, I programmed myself to immediately just go to a corner. And then I would hug my kids, and we'd talk about it. And I wasn't beating anybody. You guys can hear, you guys hear me. I get loud. And so as I was learning new responsive skills, so that aha was probably the most important aha moment in my life. And it's why I'm dedicated to the parent-child readings that I do. is being able to help parents understand their kids and understand their kids' perceptions of them. Okay. Because I wouldn't look at me the way my child looked at me, but I also wasn't 5 years old, and I thought about, well, how do I look at my parents, And so this idea that everybody is and I already believed that everybody was an individual from birth, but that just really solidified it. And so not only did it make me want to heal myself, I then went on to study with H. Stephen Glenn, PhD, who was the founder of resiliency studies back in the 1960s and 70s. And he had a program called Developing Capable People. And I was trained by him and mentored by him. And it's billed as a parenting course. It's really a communications course. And it's designed to develop resiliency in youth, but also adults. And I think... I don't think I would have done any of that if it hadn't been for that. I could still see where I was sitting when I had that epiphany. Well, thank you, Lisette. Well, now that I'm running low on questions, I think I'm going to save some for the patron-only podcast, and where I will answer another really good question about how I personally use astrology. You guys ask such good questions, so I'll answer that in the patron-only podcast about how I use astrology in my day-to-day life. And the answer on a yes and no is yes, I do. I do, when I'm not being a silly head and not looking at my transits. So patron-only episode will come out later this week. I'm going to be talking about the chart of Edgar Allan Poe. And I'm going to read from the Telltale Heart because it's spooky season. And and we'll get some more astrology Q&A and probably an astrology roast or two. I'm sure somebody will be roast worthy throughout this week. Well, as always, I very much love accompanying you on your commute to work, or on your Sunday walk, or when you're running the errands, doing the grocery shopping, folding the laundry, whatever it is we're doing together today. Thank you for letting me be part of it. As always, without you, whether you're a patron or a listener, there is no me, and I am eternally grateful. And may the odds be forever in your favor this October. See you next week.